This is the Guns Magazine podcast, episode number 99. Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Magazine podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent Wheat. Thanks for joining us as we talk to the interesting people who make up the world of shooting, hunting, and the firearms industry. First, before we get started, let's talk about our great sponsors. 1791 Gun Leather is the presenting sponsor of the Guns Magazine podcast, and they would like you to know their appreciation for the Second Amendment fuels their passion for gun leather and its representation of the original patriots of this great nation. 100% certified American steer hide joins 4 generations of professional leather artisans to create the perfect firearms holster. Carry your firearm with pride knowing that each 1791 gun leather holster is handcrafted to be the best holster for your firearm. See their full product lineup at 1791gunleather.com. The supporting sponsor of the Guns Magazine podcast is Hodgdon Powder. Available in granular powder and pellets, Hodgdon's family of 777 powders gives muzzleloading enthusiasts a quick cleaning, low-odor black powder substitute for rifle and pistol applications. To learn more, visit Hodgdon.com. In today's episode, we get a peek under the hood and behind the closed doors of big tech with Chuck Rossi. Chuck is a former engineer at Facebook who is now a firearms industry consultant and co-founder of Open Source Defense. Chuck answers the big question of, does Facebook hate guns and gun owners? And he offers some ideas on how to avoid problems and better craft your pro-gun, pro-2A digital messages. Now here's Chuck Rossi on Big Tech and Guns. Well, good afternoon, Chuck.
Good afternoon.
Well, I appreciate you joining us here on the Guns Magazine podcast. Your reputation precedes you. You are a gun enthusiast, a very big gun enthusiast, and a staunch defender of the Second Amendment, but you also worked in big tech at Facebook, and you're a consultant also for the firearms industry. So we hear a lot of things about how big tech feels about all of us shooters. And now I've actually got insight from a deep insider, so we don't have to use like a cover name or hide your name on this thing, do we?
No, that's right. I left Facebook in 2018 after 11 years there, mostly in an engineering capacity. I was in the end, I was a director of engineering for a big part of the infrastructure that dealt with releasing Facebook's software and the website and on mobile devices and things like that. But the last 2 years at Facebook, I spent as kind of an SME, a subject matter expert in the firearms space with the community operations and policy teams to help them out because there wasn't expertise in that area, right? And we all felt the effects of that.
Yeah,
Starting
definitely.
in about 2016 is when it really started to happen.
Well, Chuck, I've got to ask the big overarching question here right off the bat. Is there a vast conspiracy, and does big tech hate guns and all us folks that like them?
So it's certainly a complicated answer, and right out of the gate, I'll say no. There's no conspiracy is a strong word, and it's actually more frustrating than that. It would be actually good if there was a conspiracy because you could point to it and kind of pick it apart.
Exactly.
It's just it's unfortunately it's 3 things. It's there's ignorance, there's incompetence, and there's intent. So those are the 3 things that make it feel quite rightly that firearms owner and the Second Amendment and in general are being kind of persecuted on the social platforms. And again, we're talking kind of about Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, the whole 9 yards. I don't want to pick on Facebook specifically. I mean, obviously, That's where my experiences is with Facebook and Instagram, but these problems are across the board. So if we, pick that apart, I'd say the biggest thing is indifference. Those platforms are humongous. They are worldwide monopolies of information of all things everyone does. The number of people or the interest group that we represent is kind of insignificant in the grand scheme of things. It hurts me to say it, but we are all the firearms industry. Everyone we see at SHOT Show, that whole SHOT Show floor is like they could disappear tomorrow, and the big the big advertising networks of Facebook and YouTube probably would not notice.
Yeah.
Right. So that kind of ignoring of the sector is our first problem. Then there is incompetence. And I don't mean it in a mean way. I just mean that it's, these platforms are not going to have the best people working on firearms stuff. Okay. And I swear to God, while I was there working with the firearms in that space, I had a hard time finding someone who knew the difference between a shotgun and a rifle.
Wow.
Right. Like what does a shotgun shoot? Why is that? Was that different than a rifle, or what, are they different? So things like that. And then finally, there is a bit of intent, and it's no surprise that the big Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon is kind of seems to be dominated by a very left-leaning leadership and a very left-leaning employee base.
Yeah.
And there's a overall, and this is in the media as well, this pervasive view that guns are inherently bad. Like anything that would encourage the use of a gun or somehow view it in a positive way, or that you'd want to actually drive people towards guns or guns ownership, must be bad.
Right.
Right. So that intent, either very forward or very kind of under the covers, very subconsciously, is absolutely in the minds of people making some of these decisions. Right. And there's your intent.
Well, that kind of sounds like we interviewed our video editor, Sherry Legate, and she was the color commentator for the Olympic shooting sports on NBC, the National Broadcasting Corporation. And I asked her a question, and she said, I get that question all the time. Is NBC anti-gun? And she says, I've only received positive feedback from coworkers, and a lot of them are gun enthusiasts. She said, I can't speak for the executive suite and, the board of directors and that kind of stuff, but the folks doing the work down on the floor, the group she's with were, generally neutral or pro-gun. Is that kind of the situation, that there's a lot of folks that they've not formed this vast conspiracy on the work floor, but, maybe the leadership is far more left-leaning in their political views?
Yeah, that kind of mirrors a bit what I saw as well. And when I was doing my work with the people who are in this space, kind of on the, as you say, kind of on the ground, looking at individual posts, looking at a Facebook group to see if it should be taken down or not for firearms sales, things like that, they were generally trying to do the right thing, quote unquote, and generally did. They didn't always have the resources and the knowledge they needed to do it well, and that's where I was trying to help, and did help for a couple of years. But as you moved up the chain, that got much harder to see, that objectivity or that kind of willingness to objectively, dispassionately say yes or no on content and on policy.
Yeah. And
again, it's not, I'll be specific here. So it wasn't so much, Zuckerberg, who is a gun owner, and famously for 1 year only ate meat that he harvested himself, right?
I didn't know that. Amazing.
Yeah, every year he used to do considered a corporate or personal challenge. And 1 year he only ate meat that he harvested, and he did harvest his own game in a variety of ways. And so I didn't so much see it there. But then again, Mark deals with really the engineering and product side of the company. The content policy is more in Sheryl Sandberg's wheelhouse. And, she's not, to my knowledge, come out and posted it or made a public statement as far as kind of pro-gun, anti-gun, but it's pretty clear, that she's not in favor of firearms the way we would be. Right. I'll put it to that way. Her sister is, I think she's on the contributor, if not on the board of one of the gun control groups, one of the Bloomberg groups. And you had the other one blew my mind. This one blew my mind. So you have the head of I guess it was the head of global marketing at Facebook, for basically reaching out to companies and making companies successful on Facebook as advertisers. Carolyn Everson, she is quite anti-gun, and founded a group that is anti-gun. And as the head of the whole department, a whole group of this billion-dollar behemoth that is basically the main lifeblood of advertisers, everywhere, actively pushing all this anti-gun stuff, blew my mind. It's like you're objectively going against, every company at the floor shot plus the millions of others, that not millions, but many companies who cannot get a fair shake on Facebook as far as advertising or having an advertising presence. And you have someone in that role who's driving that. That was the most overt kind of evidence of a bias that I saw while I was there.
It seems strikingly similar to maybe David Chipman being in charge of the ATF.
Oh, yeah. That's a good example. Yes.
Talk about the process. How does the Brent Wheat blog, gun blog, come to the attention of, say, Facebook? And if there's questions raised against the terms of service, are you violating it? Are you disseminating, scary content or whatever? How does that whole process work? Does it start with a machine, or does it start with some person sitting in a cubicle somewhere? And then where does it go from there?
Yeah, great question. And it's always in our minds when things happen to us on these platforms. You feel attacked. You feel like, okay, I'm being made to feel bad, like I did something wrong, like I'm a bad person, like 1-to-1, right? You, huge company, just told me directly, Brent, Chuck, you're bad. You messed up. You need to be punished for something you did. And you're like, it's indignant. I clearly did not do anything wrong, right? And so this is the base relationship these platforms have established with their users. And I defy you to find another company that you deal with on a daily basis that treats you this way, right? It's the worst customer experience that could ever be designed. Okay. And that's the fundamental problem with these platforms right now, is they were developed without any consideration whatsoever to dealing with customer issues like this. And their excuse is, we have billions of customers worldwide. Right. And that's completely true. And it's a hard problem, but to abandon it and to kind of come after us with these ridiculous Facebook jail times and losing our accounts. And I mean, it's no joke to lose your account. I mean, probably many people on your listen to your podcast are like, well, I'm not going to use Facebook or Instagram or get into that stuff. And that's perfect. That's fine. But there's billions of us who do. And we've put a lot of our personal information there, our pictures of our kids and graduations and baptisms and babies and all these things into these systems. We've used them for our identity. We use Facebook login to get into other sites. We use Google login to use other sites. Those are good systems because it's a single secure system you can use to get into other things. But if you lose your Facebook account and you're banned because you posted a picture of a firearm, or they said, oh, no, you're trying to sell us a firearm, or you violated some sort of policy and you lose that account, you have been harmed in a very real way. You've lost all your images, all your pictures. You lost all the messages in Messenger that you've ever sent. Any comment you've ever made in any group, anyone's post, anyone's picture is deleted, is gone. You become ghosted Soviet style, like you couldn't even believe, right? Yeah. And now you've lost access to Uber and to Airbnb and to all these other sites that you used Facebook login to get in. If you have an Oculus headset, a virtual reality headset that you bought for good money, you can no longer log into your Oculus account. If you have a Facebook portal, like a little Amazon Alexa type device, you now have no access to that, right? So the implications of being permabanned on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook or Twitter are extremely severe and cause monetary and real damage, right? Mm-hmm. So these are the issues that I would love to see the Congress go after and the regulators go after. All that said, I didn't answer your question, which was the process that puts this into place and destroys my life to some degree. What is it? Is it a person? Is it a machine? How did that happen? And I don't know, obviously it's been like probably about 2 years since I had firsthand experience here, but traditionally it is a combination of contractors overseas, either in India, Philippines, Eastern Europe, some in the US, so Florida, Texas, other places, Arizona. Those contractors who come and go and are there in large numbers are the humans taking action. And more, there is machine learning and AI that's looking for patterns, and those are making decisions as well. But both of those things, the people and the machines, and we all know this as tinkers and engineers, garbage in, garbage out, right? So if the training set for the AI model is bad, the results are bad. If the training into the contractors is bad, the results are bad. So that's what you're experiencing for the most part when you get, dinged on Facebook and Instagram, et cetera.
Again, though, going back to the very basic, does a human find that most of the time, or do they just respond to complaints, or does a machine pick it out and make a human go, you need to check this out?
Traditionally, it was more human-based. So it was these contractors who get there's a lot of exposés and leaks of these contractors kind of went rogue after they quit or got fired, and they go right up a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So you can read, if you're really interested, you can read more about their experience. It's a horrible, horrible job. It's not a good use of human beings.
Right.
To basically, they get about 5 to 10 seconds per report. So someone reports a post or a comment or a picture, or a group, they have a few seconds to look at it, go into their brain of database of what's allowed and what's not, and click, yes or no.
Oh my.
Go, no go, right?
Wow.
And we know we're very focused on the firearm stuff. So they see a picture of a gun, and a vast majority, like huge majority of these people, especially the ones overseas, they've never seen a gun in real life, right? And they don't know guns from pogo sticks. So it's like, is this post against policy or not? And they have to make a decision. And some, if they just see a gun, will say, okay, I think I understand that those are against policy.
Wow.
And make that what we call a false positive. So that's, and then more and more, I think the machines are kind of taking over some of that first line reporting, or certainly if something becomes quote unquote problematic, like I think you'll see more machine action on kind of the quote unquote misinformation stuff that we're all kind of being in. Every post has got a misinformation little banner on it now, right? Yeah. And I think pretty sure those are probably more machine based.
So what happens when, this is a big question I get, is when folks get the warning letter, the ban, or whatever the sanction is, they try to work with the platform and find out, okay, what did I do wrong? And you'll never get an answer. You'll never get a human being. It's generally you get kind of a form letter, and either the problem goes away or you go away. So how do these companies handle that on the back end? It sounds to me like maybe the next level supervisors are so inundated with work that maybe they're not doing the best job.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, so the escalation, sometimes when you catch a ban or you catch some Facebook jail, you might get an escalation path. And I'll tell people, listen, use every tool possible to escalate your issue. Go on Google, search for ways to escalate issues on Facebook, depending on it. It depends. This is getting way too much inside baseball, but all these messages are coming at you from different groups within Facebook, and they don't always work together. So the process for appealing an ad or a boost that should have been okay is completely different than a post versus a picture versus a group, right? So those are all like separate kind of paths within Facebook, right? Or if it's
a huge bureaucracy
Facebook.
Like the government.
Yeah, not quite that bad. A little more. I can at least say it worked. I worked in government a little bit too, and I can tell you that Facebook is organizationally quite good and nimble for a company its size. But I can say that confidently in the engineering side. But I will tell you in the community operations inside where there is no money made, you don't see the resources being put in, right? You got to understand, like, this is a little sidetrack here, but like everything we're talking about does nothing but cost money. Okay. You're not making any money by dealing with these customers and making their accounts come or go. It's like, it's just cost. Yeah. Every time you escalate, every time you complain, every time something's taken down, every time they have to fix something, it's all just a cost center. I don't think they're making decisions wholly on that, but when they look at how to allocate budgets, it's going to be like, okay, engineering and product development and growth and marketing and ads and ad system and all that's going to get the bulk of the money. We need some amount of money into the community operations and customer support side just to keep our heads above water. Yeah. Right.
And people lose sight of that fact because we do depend on social media and online stuff so much in our lives, but these are still run by private companies whose ultimate goal is not to make your life better. It's to make money. That's what they're there for. And it's, if you're a capitalist, good for them.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I will, in defense of Facebook to some degree, I will say, again, I spent 11 years there, so obviously I'm biased, but I do have a lot of personal firsthand information and experience. Facebook, especially, I was there from 2008, was it? I forget. In those early days, especially when it was, I joined, there were less than 100 million people on the platform, right? There were so many ways we could have made so much more money. Okay. I mean, like with the demographic data we were getting, the metadata that we were getting on people and what they were doing, what they liked, and just the level of any marketer would kill for that stuff. And they do. That's why Facebook's been successful as an advertiser. But understand, for as bad as people, currently have a view of Facebook and what they quote unquote sell my information, which we didn't, it could have been so much worse. So there was, Mark absolutely, and I believe this to this day, absolutely has kind of this idea of trying to, especially in the early days, making a platform where people could connect and show and share the things that were important to them. And money was, a secondary thing. It wasn't, what did he say? It's like, we don't build products to make money. We make money to build more products, to build a better experience. Right. And I think, I saw firsthand that we would not go down a path of something that would exploit, a more and more monetary gain, just for the sake of we could do it, and instead did things that were a better experience. Now it's gotten much more complicated. Now things are so huge and all sorts of interests, and but that honestly, that's how it used to be.
So switching gears away from Facebook and all the other big platforms, let's talk about gun owners and Second Amendment supporters. What are some of the things that we're doing wrong in terms of getting our message out there? Or is it not our problem? They just don't like what we're saying.
This is a really timely discussion to have. And this is exactly why when I was towards the end of my Facebook time in late 2018, I helped co-found a group called Open Source Defense. And opensourcedefense.org is a pro-2A organization that is 100% gun rights, 0% culture war. Right. And it was born of this, I've been in this fight, let me think. So since about college, so about 1984, 1985 is when I first got into the kind of debating and advocating for the Second Amendment. I remember in college debate programs and taking that stance. And I think it was in 89 was the real first, I think it was the Stockton shooting in 89, where the whole concept of the quote unquote assault weapons was kind of born, having that debate. And so I've been in the thick of it for, at least on the sidelines, at least having it on a personal level and as much as I can do for many, many years. And now is a fantastic time for us to kind of reboot a bit and try to embrace a wider segment of people who are just now getting into firearms and self-sufficiency and their own agency, and eventually lead them to kind of Second Amendment thinking of like, hey, you were guaranteed a right, not by a government, but by, the creator or the space dust you were made from, gives you this ability to exist, right? And the ability to ensure your existence. That's, and you got to lead them there. You don't want to lead with that, but you want them to get there on their own.
Really too big to grasp out of the gate.
Yeah. It's like, it's a sledgehammer approach. Yeah. And for us, it's like second nature, right? We've been espousing that for decades, if not centuries. So what Open Source Defense is a collection of individuals. There's about 7 of us as the founders and got this thing going. It's great for thought pieces on what we're doing. Our social feeds are very current on current events in the Second Amendment space. But more importantly, we appeal to a much broader sense of non-traditional gun owners. And since 2020, and I'm sure you've talked about this and seen it, obviously you've seen the NICS numbers just get smashed every month for quite a few months during the pandemic and all that. We want to capture those people, and we want to do it with a message that's not the traditional bearded white guy.
I was going to say, right? The old white guy. That's me.
Exactly. It's you and me, right? So we want to very much capture the people who were driven to acknowledge the need for a Second Amendment, even inadvertently, when they went to the stores during the pandemic in the early parts of 2020, when it's like, hey, I just went to the store and there's nothing on the shelves. Like, I can't get tomato sauce or flour or yeast, let alone toilet paper. But there's no water on the shelves. There's no this, that, the other. Like, for quite a while, and you start to think like, well, I have some of that stuff, and now more and more people don't. And gee, maybe somebody wants my stuff,
Yeah. Yep.
And then you had the whole civil unrest thing with riots and general breakdown of social order in quite populated areas. And that's another thing that drove people like, you know what, I really am responsible for myself. The police just said, so long.
Yeah.
And these rude awakenings kind of crashed down on a lot of people who were maybe more center or center left. And we, like it or not, need those people. We cannot exist as a 50-50 thing, right? As a 50-50 right. We need to be 100% right. And that's what, so that kind of answer your question. That's where I hope, as Second Amendment advocates, we should put our effort, not buying our 15th Glock, but helping someone else buy their first, Glock or Ruger or Smith & Wesson or whatever they're going to buy, right?
Yep.
So that's what open source defense has been about. And we've had some good success, and I really enjoy onboarding new people into this world.
So talk about some of the ways we can craft our message, because this is a topic that we have meetings about weekly, and we both brainstorm from our side, trying to help our clients and our clients. How do I get all these folks involved? They've already bought the first Glock, but now how do we get them to buy the second, third, and 15th like the rest of us? And so far, I got to say, I don't think anybody's really got a handle on it yet.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And I've done things with like other firearms marketing groups and NSSF and other agencies that do this. And I look at the ad campaigns and things, and it's tough because we are traditionally an industry that's, a little bit of a closed circle, right? Mm-hmm. We so the question is, how do you get new blood into these areas? And this is the same problem in tech that we had for hiring. It's the same problem in many industries.
Yeah.
I would say the thing you have going for you now is that the pool of applicants has probably never been bigger as far as people who are now into it. The way we approached it, one way is to go at it from the self-sustainability angle. So don't go for the hardcore from my cold dead hands kind of attitude.
Yeah.
Go from like, there's a bunch of urbanites who are heading for the hills because they want to live more off grid. They want to be self-sustaining. You get them through that like very lightweight prepper kind of thing. Very like, I want to harvest my own food. I want to be self-sufficient. I want to live. We talked to a number of people who were city dwellers and now have land in the Catskills and Appalachia or in the West. And so go after that lifestyle thing, right? Yeah. And don't hit them with like the freedom fist and the whole thing, which we all know and love. And I'm not, I'm fine with that. But just like, you got to come at it from the attitude that's leading these people down this road, right? And meet them right at the beginning of the road, and then take them the rest.
Well, that's what we talk about a lot, is get that first step, because as a firearms instructor, it was always cool. We'd bring folks in. We actually had a PETA member in one of our classes. She had the T-shirt, and we kind of made a little joke, just a light joke about it. And she fired back at us that she was a PETA member, and she was extremely left-wing and liberal, but she had decided she was one of the ones early on that, they're an endangered species, and we're going to hunt them down on the streets. And, our goal was, we said, okay, sorry, don't be butthurt. We didn't say that, but we decided, myself and the other staff, that we're going to show her that once you get past it all, we're a bunch of pretty cool people, whether we agree politically or not, and that gun folks are good folks. And by the end of the weekend that we were teaching this class, I think that spark had, that fuse had been lit, that she walked in with a chip on her shoulder because these are crazy right-wing, as you said, freedom fist guys, and they're going to hate me and probably, accidentally shoot me. And she walked out of there like, you know, you could tell we didn't change any political views, and I really didn't care to at that moment, but she really thought gun people are all right. Maybe this is something I want to start doing. And that, for me, was a real watershed moment when I realized you can change people's ideas and perceptions just by being a good example of a good example.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had that experience at Open Source Defense a lot. We do these Zoom office hours, and this was during COVID, so we couldn't take people to the range, right? The ranges were closed and everything else. Plus, you couldn't buy a gun or ammo if your life depended on it, which it did. So we took people on these Zoom. You know, you could go, and in fact, today you can still go if you have a friend or relative that you want to have someone introduced to firearms and some basic safety and tips. You can go to our website, and there's a spot to sign up with a calendar for a Zoom session with one of us. We're all certified instructors, et cetera, et cetera. So we met a lot of people doing that. And again, like your experience, I had like a self-espoused, hardcore socialist, there, and he had went out and bought some Mossberg shotgun and probably an M&P, and was like, okay, what do I do with these things? I'm like, well, let me get you on board and we'll do some safety. But you can have that entire conversation and an awesome day at the range and not say a thing about who's president, who's doing what the law, you can say, it's work. Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to say it's easy. You got to, when you're doing this stuff 1-to-1 or 1 to dozens at best, right? And it's work on our part, but we have to do it.
Yep.
And it takes effort to bite your tongue and say like, well, here's the law, especially in California, right? I got to explain these most insane gun laws on the planet.
I'm sorry,
to people in California. Yeah, I mean, it's laughable because it's just, you want to cry actually. And so I get to explain them in a dispassionate way of like, here's how you can't have your thumb across the back of the gun, but you can keep your thumb on the right side of the gun or high enough above the trigger that it's not a quote unquote assault weapon, blah, blah, blah. And the absurdity, it just explains itself. I don't have to make any commentary, right?
Exactly.
And this is what we found Open Source Defense. When we make our arguments in our newsletters and our Twitter or whatever it is, it's just like such base logic backed by like very accessible numbers and very simple data to say like, we don't have to do a lot of persuasion here. Okay. People kind of get like, why am I so hyped up against guns? Right? When the data and the people are nothing like when I'm constantly getting bombarded in the media of like just the presence of a gun, the mere existence of a firearm is a really bad thing.
Yep.
Right.
And they discover that a toddler doesn't walk into the gun store and walk out with a grenade launcher. The laws don't allow it to happen. And like, but I've always heard you can buy anything you want and, go kill people, and it don't work that way.
You must have heard the stories during COVID and during the riots, like people like shocked they couldn't, especially here again in California. It's like, well, you jumped through all these hoops with all the requirements for these, all the documents you needed, all the signatures, all the sign-offs, all the like your utility bill and this, that, and the other. You got your gun. We'll see you in 10 days. Yeah. And they're like, what?
I need it now.
Exactly. 10 days.
Oh, that's funny. Well, I do want to circle back to the whole Facebook and all that thing. Okay. I'll just turn these microphones off. Click. Okay, just between you and me, is there some kind of secret sauce that would help to boost our posts and our videos? And is there something we can do or not do that would make us reach a wider audience?
Yeah, so this is interesting topic, and I have a whole slide deck on this. I've given this presentation to all sorts of industry groups and via the NSSF and other organizations. I have a whole deck on this. Anyone who's in the industry and would like to discuss this stuff with me, you can reach me at Chuck at opensourcedefense.org, and I'm happy to have a more detailed discussion. But the important part here, Brent, is I want people to understand what you can do on Facebook, because it is actually, you're not going to believe I'm going to say this, but of all the platforms, Facebook is actually quite, as the policies are written, Facebook is actually quite welcoming is a strong word, but quite accepting of a fair amount of gun content. Okay. And so if I just encapsulate it really quick, if as an individual, you can post about guns. You can post links to sales of guns. Like if some of your local dealers having a sale, or Bernal's or Midway or somebody's having it, you can post a link to that thing. You can post gun content. You just cannot buy, sell, or trade guns, gun parts, or ammunition.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're a company, your gun store, your guns magazine, your, again, like the big ones like Bernal's or Cabela's or whoever, or even a little mom and pop gun store, you can have a Facebook business page. You can post on that business page guns for sale. You can post sales. You can post ammo is in stock with prices, links to it. All that stuff is okay as long as you're a brick and mortar or a online retailer. Okay. We don't check FFL status, or they don't check FFL status. But if you come across as a brick and mortar or online retailer, you can be a business with a presence on Facebook and Instagram. The trick here is that if you are in that business of selling guns, ammunition, or gun parts, you cannot boost or advertise.
Yeah.
Flat out. Okay. So you have no way to increase your reach besides organic growth. Guns Magazine is in that, and all your properties are in that space because while you don't directly sell firearms, you link to, like if I go to guns.com or wherever I go on your properties, I'm going to see ads and links to go buy guns.
Exactly.
So that disqualifies you from being able to run ads.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the lay of the land. It's not perfect. It's something, you can get out there and but you have to. So your challenge, everyone in this space who does deal with actual firearms is to get organic growth. And now you're in the bucket with every other business in the world who uses these platforms. And we're all equal in that regard, that they all need to get organic growth.
Yeah.
So now I would point you to the interwebs, and you can do all the seminars and courses about how to game the system for not even game it, but just make effective content that will help your organic growth.
I was going to say, and again, we're kind of maybe getting a little more inside baseball on this, but there's really no way to game this anymore. And I've been on the internet as long as there's been an internet almost. And there were certain things you used to be able to keyword stuffing and all those tricks, and they would work for a while. But now the algorithms do seem sophisticated enough. You can lean on certain things, but you're not going to do some trick that a guy sells you for $59.95 and just, blow the doors off your traffic.
Yeah, exactly. And if you do, it's only going to work for like a week. So yeah, it's just definitely an arms race in terms of if somebody figures out something, they will, the platforms absolutely have dozens and dozens of engineers who will counteract it.
Yeah.
I will say one trick that you can do, and it's still quite above board. And I did this, I helped Beretta do this. So yeah, it's funny. Beretta, right? One of the oldest companies in the world, right? Continuously in operation since, I don't know what, 1500 something or even earlier, right? Cannot advertise, right? The new world, the new digital world, they cannot run ads. It's offensive. So what we did is, they divided Beretta and made a separate business page on Facebook for Beretta gear. And there is all your lifestyle stuff, all your logoed stuff, your lifestyle stuff, your everything that's not a gun part or ammunition. So by making a different top level domain of berettagear.com and having a different business page associated with that, they can now run ads and boosts, and they can get brand awareness. They can sell their non-firearm stuff, and they can have a presence out there by having kind of cleaving off all the SKUs that are problematic for advertising and putting all the SKUs that are not problematic into a different category.
Interesting.
So that's a nice trick.
Well, very cool. And we talked about open source defense. How do folks visit your website?
So I would encourage everyone to go to opensourcedefense.org and sign up for our newsletter. It's a very lightweight, once a week, comes out on Monday newsletter, super brief to the point. We're not going to waste anyone's time. We don't ask for fundraising, nothing like that. We're purely an information source. Encourage them to use our Zoom sessions for training if they need. And I would encourage anyone listening, both industry and non-industry, if you do run into an issue where on Facebook or Instagram, you have been the victim of a quote unquote false positive, and you're pretty sure reading the rules that you didn't violate and you lost your account or your business account or your personal account, or you're having trouble on those platforms, please reach out to me, Chuck at opensourcedefense.org. And no guarantees, but I would be willing to go to bat for you and see if I could talk to people on the inside who will listen and put your case forward via another route. But also I encourage you obviously to use every other route available to you that you can find for those situations.
Excellent. A special value add for the listeners of Guns Magazine. Well, Chuck Rossi, it's been very interesting, very enlightening, and appreciate you taking the time.
Well, it's good to talk to you, Brent. Thanks so much.
I really enjoyed talking to Chuck Rossi, and I definitely took some notes to hopefully avoid future problems so I don't end up in Facebook jail. And with that, we hope you're enjoying the Guns Magazine podcast. Guns Magazine was first in the business, and we're bringing you the most interesting chats in the gun world. If you've got questions or comments about the show, please email me. That's editor@gunsmagazine.com. Make sure you subscribe to us on your favorite podcast directory, YouTube, and of course at gunsmagazine.com. And while you're online, please don't forget to check out our great sister publications, American Handgunner Magazine at americanhandgunner.com and americancop.com. We'd also appreciate it if you'd share a favorite episode or some kind words on your own social media. And please don't forget to check out the presenting sponsor of the Guns Magazine podcast, 1791 Gun Leather. Visit them at 1791gunleather.com. Well, that's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast. For the entire staff at FMG Publications, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat. Now get out there and get shooting.